Does everyone in Wyoming chew tobacco? Did everybody in Wyoming vote for Trump? And could a Wyoming woman beat you up?
Now we're going to answer those questions and more. So grab a whiskey, because we're going to darn tootin' unbox the great state of Wyoming.
Would you look at that? They're extracting coal. Coal's a big deal in Wyoming. There's a 1 out of 3 chance the energy used to power your home was mined in Wyoming. There's also a 10% chance the natural gas you use was tapped here too. Wyoming's full of energy riches, and energy is what's defined this state for decades. Lots of people here in Wyoming rely on the energy sector for their jobs and way of life. But Wyoming isn't all coal and uranium miners or gas extractors. In fact, as we'll see later, Wyoming's in trouble financially, and it's going to need to diversify itself if it wants to prosper. Now, if we really want to get a feel for what Wyoming's like, we got to get out of these coal fields and check out other areas of the state too. That way, if you're thinking of moving here, you'll know where to go. This is Wyoming. Okay, so maybe there isn't a lot going on here. I lied. It's actually quite boring. I mean, there's only 578,759 people here, and it's the 10th largest state. That means there's only 6 people per square mile in Wyoming. A lot of that's because of the state's landscape, which includes high rugged terrain, valleys, plains, and large, flat, treeless basins. Because of this, the state's cities and towns are really spread out. So if you don't like people and you want some space, this is the perfect place. That is, if you can stand lots and lots and lots of wind. But it's really pretty, and there's a lot to see in the state. We're going to begin over here in the northwest part of Wyoming. Most of the state of Wyoming can be divided up into either mountains or plains. Here in this part of the state, it's dominated by the rugged Rocky Mountains. Up here is Yellowstone National Park, the second largest national park outside of Alaska. Here you're going to find amazing mountains, forests, the largest concentration of mammals in the lower 48, and of course, all the bison. Half of the world's hydrothermal features are found here too. Everybody knows about Old Faithful, but it's not as faithful as you might think. It doesn't erupt every hour like it used to. Steamboat Geyser is actually way bigger. But what you really have to worry about is volcanoes. One of the largest active volcanoes in the world is underneath these lands. It's a super volcano, and rumor is when this thing erupts again, it might wipe out large parts of Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho too. And that would be a bad thing. It would also affect our global climate for decades. If the volcano doesn't kill you, lightning might. Wyoming ranks first in the country for lightning deaths per capita. Down here is where all the good skiing in Wyoming is. This whole valley here is called Jackson Hole, and there are several communities up here where you can waste your days away sipping whiskey and staring out into the rugged wilderness. Teeny tiny places with a history of fur trapping, places where the average home price is well over $1 million. Jackson's the biggest such place in this valley. It's home to 10,000 people and has one of the best ski resorts in the nation. It's also the most liberal place in this whole state, where about 6 in 10 people's a Democrat. Can you believe that here in Wyoming? It's also a place with really expensive second homes. It's super rich here. The top 1% make about $16 million a year, and the average person still makes $122 grand a year. It's been called the most economically unequal place in the nation. Some say the billionaires have chased the millionaires out of this part of Wyoming. Another big chunk of this part of the state's taken up by the Wind River Reservation, home to the Shoshone and Arapaho Native American tribes. It's the 7th largest reservation in the country. There's actually 26,000 people within this reservation land, but the city of Riverton makes up almost half of that. Of course, there's a lot of poverty and drugs and casinos here. Up here is Cody. There's about 10,000 people here, and homes are around 350 grand, and in many cases, you get a lot of land up here. Although you'll probably find Wyoming land prices and home prices aren't as cheap as you might expect, and Cody is an example of that. Cody is where the real frontier men lived way out west, and this city still celebrates its pioneer and cowboy past. They like to call themselves the rodeo capital of the world here. Big deal rodeos take place in Cody every damn night in the summer months, so if you're into that, you'd like it, I guess. Cody's really safe and a good place to be if you don't need fun things in your face all the time. But for the most part, there's really nothing to do up here for entertainment, and there aren't many jobs. It's kind of a touristy town, but you'd likely be getting your clothing at Walmart. Now there's a whole internet subculture that thinks Wyoming simply doesn't exist, and they're not kidding. There's all sorts of websites and social media groups which talk about Wyoming as if it's a fake state or something. These Wyoming deniers say, "Have you ever been to Wyoming?" No. Well, do you know anybody from Wyoming? No. Well then, Wyoming doesn't exist. Over here in the northeast part of the state, it's a lot different than it is out west. This is where you're going to find Wyoming's wide open brown and yellow plains. But there is one geographical standout to note. It's the Devil's Tower. This big giant rock is 1,200 feet tall, or about as tall as the Empire State Building. It's worth seeing once or twice, but you can't live here. I think it's protected. Areas to note over here are the Sheridan metro area and Gillette. Sheridan proper has about 18,000 people, which is actually big for Wyoming. It's actually a pretty good and safe place to live way out here near the Montana border. Lots of rich, old people here, so if you're rich and or old, you'd fit in. It too has a whole ranching, cowboy, pioneer vibe to it. Now Gillette though is a big place to live. There's 32,000 people here, fella. This is a big old mining town, boy. Some would call Gillette a dirty, filthy, blue-collar town with a bunch of man camps, and I don't think people in Gillette would be offended by that. They have some big buildings here too, which were paid for with coal money. Gillette's relatively safe, and it's not too expensive either. Homes can be purchased for well under $300,000, but you'd be hard-pressed to meet anybody up here in these parts that isn't connected to the coal industry. Gillette calls itself the energy capital of the nation, with all the coal dug out of the land nearby. Wyoming's Powder River Basin has 6 of the 10 largest coal mines in the United States. The largest coal mine in the world by reserves is the North Antelope Rochelle coal mine in the Powder River Basin, here near Gillette. But Wyoming's in transition. Coal jobs have been the foundation for Wyoming's economy for nearly 50 years. Most of Wyoming's infrastructure and schools were built using coal money, and most of the high-paying jobs in this state are related to mining, especially in the smaller towns. Wyoming's coal industry is collapsing much faster than people could predict, mostly because the world's shifting to alternative energy. Wyoming's been aware of that and has allowed some wind farming companies to come in and create new wind farms here, but there's been pushback. For one, this is a very Republican state, so no talk about global warming here, fella. People also complain about how these wind turbines are ruining the pretty views. And Wyoming state government, they've imposed huge taxes on wind farms, thus throttling their development. But if Wyoming did go in on wind power, they'd crush it. Due to the state's unique terrain, the bottoms of the mountain ranges here produce a steady wind that's always around. It's the windiest state, actually, where there's a constant wind of 13 miles an hour on average. That's every day. So if you're a skinny person moving to Wyoming, you should probably get some ankle weights. So we know Wyoming has a lot of miners and roughnecks who toil in the very manly energy fields. It's a tough bunch. I mean, you know what they say, Wyoming, where men are men, and so are the women. But a lot of the state's made of cowboys and ranchers too. Farming is small, mostly hay and sugar beets. Wyoming's 38th in the nation for farm output. But cattle is a $1 billion a year industry here in Wyoming. There's twice as many cattle in this state as people, and there's a lot of sheep here too. Wyoming ranks second in the country for production of wool. I mean, this state's never really lost its whole cowboy vibe since, well, it was a state. I mean, it is the cowboy state.
I would love to live in Wyoming. I would be a real cowgirl.
Yeah, I'd have a horse named Isabel.
I'd have a pony too.
I'm sure you guys would, you little whippersnappers. Being out here on these plains is tough weather-wise. Summers are hot. It'll get to 103 degrees in August, but then 4 months later, it's 140 degrees colder. Winters are long and bitter, but relatively sunny, which is nice. You wouldn't fit in here if you don't like snowdrifts. You also wouldn't fit in here if you drive a hybrid vehicle, wear a yarmulke, have any obvious tattoos or piercings, have Colorado license plates, fish with worms, listen to hip-hop, eat vegan, sort your recyclables, or wear Levi's. Because everybody knows Wrangler is the only game in this town.
Here comes Wrangler, and he's one tough customer. He's hard to beat when he takes his seat, yeah. And when he says jeans, he means Wrangler.
The typical dress for your average Wyoming is super tight jeans, flannel shirts, and cowboy hats. Guns are an accessory here too. Wyoming ranks second in the country, just behind Montana for number of guns per capita. 2/3 of all folks here have at least one gun at home. Some Wyomingites have a gun for every day of the week. And worth mentioning is Wyoming is the 9th safest state as well. And you can bet that's because a lot of people here are afraid the other guy has a damn gun. There's even a law in Wyoming that if you try to restrict the Second Amendment, you could be punished criminally. They're trying to pass what they're calling a Second Amendment Preservation Act, which would make federal gun laws null and void in this state. So you definitely want to be here if the country turns to shit, since everybody here has closets full of bullets and guns. Besides guns and cattle ranchers and oilmen, Wyoming has a lot of drinkers. In many small towns in this state, all you really have are bars and trout. I mean, what else does a Wyomingite really need? Whiskey, that's what. They drink the third most whiskey of any other state here. Moving on, we come to the southwest part of the state, which is, can you guess? Come on. Yes, more mountains and coal mines. There's really nothing going on here. Rock Springs is another mining town with good hockey teams, because for some reason, mining towns have the best hockey teams here. It's boring and cold, and you just wouldn't fit in, trust me. There's 23,000 people in Rock Springs, and homes cost only $240,000, so you would live a cheap, boring life. Maybe you would fit in. Evanston's over here. It's a town of 11,000 people that used to enjoy oil production. Now it's mostly a boring place with little opportunity. You'd have to drive all the way to Salt Lake City for some real fun, because Wyoming is spread out, pal. Wyoming people drive more miles each day than anybody else in the country. Like, they don't measure things in miles, they measure it in time. Drive in the winter and you should pack an emergency kit, because you don't know if you're going to get stuck, and if anyone's going to come around for a day, or 7. There's only 12 Walmarts in this whole place. This isolation might be a reason for Wyoming's high suicide rate. The state ranks second in the country for suicide deaths, and some experts call this part of the country the suicide belt. The high number of suicide deaths can be attributed to isolation, low access to mental health care, and a tough cowboy culture where your pride means failures are hard to admit.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
Being way out in no man's land also means you better have a first aid kit and some snake anti-venom and a couple of guns on you when you're out and about these parts. A hospital is probably going to be hours away. Wyoming actually ranks last in the country for emergency response times. But it's not just rattlesnakes here that'll get you. The jackalopes will gore your legs, or you might be stampeded by a bison. Bison kill people here every year, so bison selfies are not a good idea.
That's a buffalo, not a bison.
It is? No way.
Buffalo are much larger and live in Africa. Bison look like this.
Oh, okay. So there's a bison. Thanks, Mappy. Hey, would you ever live in Wyoming?
Heck yeah, I love using my gun. But I don't think Karen would move here. Heck no, I wouldn't. There's not any fancy shopping anywhere in this state.
Who cares what she wants? Look, she's gone. Oh, Mappy's in trouble now. Sorry, Mappy. He's gonna get it later. Ah, little cowboy kid. Cute. Stop crying, kid. Okay, so you can shoot at a bison, which is this. Also in Wyoming, you can shoot at pronghorn, elk, moose, deer, bighorn sheep, black bear, mountain lion, wolves, mountain goats, and turkey. People in Wyoming just love to hunt. Just a bunch of tough hunter folks who are white. In fact, 92% of the population in Wyoming is some shade of Caucasian.
No.
Moving on, we come to the last part of the state, down here in the southeast corner. Now this is where all the people are. Like half the state's population is in this section of Wyoming alone. But there's still some small towns in these parts. Take, for instance, Lost Springs, which has a population of 1, everyone. 1 person. And look, there's a bar there. Let's call them and find out what it's like in a teeny town of 1 person in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming.
Hello.
Hi, is this the Lost Bar?
It is. Can I help you?
Yeah, hey, I'm doing a YouTube video on Wyoming, and I happen to notice that you're located in a town with 1 person in it. Is that true?
No, that's not true, and I'm on my way to a meeting.
Jeez, hope she feels better. But enough of this small town stuff. There's 3 main areas of interest here in this corner of the state. Laramie's here. It has a population of 32,000 people. Of all major cities in Wyoming, Laramie's perhaps the most expensive, where the average home price is well over $300,000. Some say Laramie is a good mix between the Old West and the New West. Laramie is perhaps the most liberal part of this whole state, after Jackson. But that's understandable since it's a college town, home to the University of Wyoming.
Go Pokes!
College football is a big deal in Wyoming, and most people support the Cowboys. It's the only real sports team the state has, though there's a lot of Broncos fans and Nuggets fans and Avalanche fans. But those are all based in Colorado, which is funny because people in Wyoming do not like Colorado people. They call them greenies because of their green license plates. Colorado people bring in their liberal politics and are driving up the cost of living here, and all their weeds blown over the border. In case you didn't know, Wyoming's a very red state, and there's only one other state, and that's Mississippi, where people are more conservative. In fact, some people who move here, they don't even register because they know their vote will be wasted. Or the liberals who move here just suck it up and register as Republicans so they can have a say in the elections. Wyoming has a lot of room to grow when it comes to political diversity. The state ranks last in gender equality. It's last when it comes to female representation at the government level, and it's the least gay state in the nation, where only 0.06% of the population's gay. That's compared to Nevada, the most gay state, which has about 9 times as many gay residents. So it's safe to say that it's okay to talk about politics at a Wyoming dinner, because everybody's a Republican. Casper's over here. Some say Casper is snobbish. I don't know why, that's just what people say. For Wyoming, Casper's pretty dangerous statistically, but the whole city here only had 2 murders last year. 2 murders, people! The whole state only had 13 last year. There were 13 murders in Chicago since yesterday. If you were to stick Casper in a state like Florida, it would look like they were all behaving. So crime in Casper is really nothing. You also wouldn't find any homeless tents here, as you would likely not find them in the rest of the state either. And then we come to Cheyenne, which is the capital of this state. There's 63,000 people here. Now we're talking. Like just about every other city we discussed, it's just a quiet, laid-back place with a strong cowboy culture. It's pretty safe overall, and there's a great food scene. The south side of Cheyenne's the worst side. The north end is nice. And while this is a major city, you go 2 miles outside of town and you're going to find a lot of homes with mile-long dirt driveways. That's just how it is here. It's Wyoming. Jobs-wise, it's slim pickings here, as you can imagine, just like it is around the rest of the state. There's an Air Force base here and some government jobs and a decent number of blue-collar jobs like railroading. The lack of white-collar jobs here is enough to keep all the city slickers away. Or is it? I mean, in today's world, cheap, wide-open spaces is kind of all the rage. And while every single western state's exploding, I mean all of them, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming really isn't. It's just kind of existing. There isn't a lot of tech growth here, nor are they scrambling to build new communities. And as the coal and oil jobs leave, you're going to see a bigger exodus of the energy folks into places like Texas or New Mexico. So while many of us are looking for that small town feel, it seems like Wyoming isn't on anybody's radar, at least not yet. But ask anybody in Wyoming how they feel about that, and I'm sure they tell you we're just fine with being anonymous. They don't want you or I to come. No, they're fine the way they are. Wyomingites are a unique bunch. Communities here are small, tight-knit groups working together to survive the way they want to. Life's a lot more simple here. You have to be a resourceful, self-reliant type, ready to jump in and help your neighbors. People just keep their heads down here and block the wind and look forward the next time nothing happens. Because in Wyoming, nothing happening is a good thing. All right, so I think we did a pretty good job of unboxing the state of Wyoming, didn't we? Yes. And there's a bunch of other smaller communities we could have talked about too. Places that are worth going into, but we ran out of time. Is Wyoming a place that you could move to? Could you handle the boredom and the isolation and the wind? Well, 579,752 people seem to think it's pretty great. Yeah, they sure do. A throwback to the old Wild West, Wyoming is. That's good enough for a catchy little song. You can really still get away in Wyoming. It's pretty much the last state where you can still be free. They don't put up with a lot of crap in Wyoming. None of that stuff that you would see in a state like yours. Wyoming is a place that you should just go. They need you, you need them, it's so perfect so. Come shoot your guns and ride a horse in Wyoming. There's a lot of land where you can bring your whole damn family. Wyoming is so big, there's a lot of room. So much sky, so much space, not much fun for you. You can be anything you want to be in Wyoming. Come be a cowboy, come be a man. Come be a cowboy, come be a man. Come be a cowboy, come be a man. Life is calling you. Wyoming's big. A special shout out to Maya, who lives in Wisconsin. She's a big fan of the show, and I wanted to thank her for watching and say hello. Hi, Maya. Mappy says hi, too.
I thought of Wyoming as the last free state in the nation when I see all the legislation taking place in other states, all the clampdowns on freedom of activity, freedom of speech, freedom of movement. I guess that's activity, but, like I say, I think of us as just being normal people living our lives, and we pretty much do what we want to do within the law. And that's that, from there, we just do whatever we want to do. Like I say, the people I know, we move here, we work and raise our families. And I mean, in a lot of ways, we're very boring, but boring makes for a nice life. It may not be exciting, but what's the old Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times. It may not be very interesting here, but it makes for a nice daily life. I work and I come home and I cook, and I don't generally worry about people breaking into my vehicles or into my home. It's just very dull in a lot of ways, but that has its appeal after, living in some exciting places.
Why is nobody moving to Wyoming in droves like they are the other Western states?
That is a really, really good question. I would say one, Wyoming calls to specific types of people who really like the outdoors, because Wyoming is the most like rugged, outdoorsy, middle of nowhere. Like it is like full of tundra. Maybe only like North Dakota or Alaska have more of that than Wyoming. But I would say like hunters really like Wyoming, and really not a lot of other people necessarily. If you identify with cowboy culture, it's huge there. But I would guess that's the reason why not a lot of people go to Wyoming, is because Wyoming it does not cater to really anyone else except outdoors people, hunters, and cowboys.
So give people an idea of what it's like to live in Wyoming. Somebody that's going to move to Wyoming, what should they expect when they move there?
Don't quote me on, okay, hold up. What should they expect? So weather-wise, expect it to be colder than warmer because of the high elevation throughout the entire state. It will snow in June. It happens a lot. Yeah, wonky weather. You're not going to really find much of stuff to do for younger folks unless you like going to the bars a lot. I mean, Cheyenne's packed full of bars. Yeah, it's a decent place if you want to raise a family. It's a pretty laid back place for that. If you have a decent job already and you're transferring, it's another great state for that. You just got to be adaptable if you move to Wyoming, and I think most people who live there are adaptable.
Hey guys, so if anything I just talked about upset you or made you sad or mad, well then do something about it. Call your local leaders and demand change. Chip in and help those in need. Make your community better, because communities don't get better without hard work and determination. America's a great place. It just needs some more love and pride.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.